And so what most people call the breaking point is what I actually call the listening point. Because when you're at your breaking point, a lot of people think that that is the moment where everything shifts. That's not necessarily the moment. Some people go through a breaking point and they stay shattered. Some people go through a breaking point and they never pick their pieces back up again, or they only pick up the pieces that they can bear to look at because everything else has so much shame connected to it. But something powerful occurs when you see your breaking point as your listening point. That breaking point that becomes a listening point is actually where God begins to download his perspective, his wisdom, his vision for what can happen from here. Some of us need our breaking point because it actually gets us to our listening point. I'm reminded of Hannah in the Bible, who kept getting provoked over and over again by a woman who could bear children even though she couldn't. And the woman kept provoking her and making her feel insecure until all of a sudden she got up from the table and it looked like maybe she had reached her breaking point, but instead she went to the temple because she understood that if I am at my breaking point, I have one or two options. I can let this thing win, or I could get into the presence of God and say, God, I need you to speak a word to me at this breaking point that changes the way I see everything that's happening in my life. I'm thinking about Jacob, who started wrestling with God, and he said, I will not let you go until you bless me. It looks like a breaking point from the outside looking in, but it's actually the moment in which I insist on hearing from God. It's not my breaking point, it's my listening point. I don't know who you are in this room, but you feel like life is trying to break you. But I want you to understand life is just trying to get your attention, because God's trying to whisper something in your ear that can only be whispered if you break down out of your ego and out of your pride and out of your shame and out of your insecurity. There is something that happens when we get desperate to hear from God, and most of the time it only happens in our breaking point. And that transformation that takes place is when I say this breaking point cannot break what God put on the inside of me. You start praying stuff like, God, if you really hear me, God, if you really see me, God, if you really got a plan for my life, I'm ready to listen. I'm ready to listen. I'm ready to obey. I'm ready to grow. I'm ready to move past this point. You can call it a breaking point, but I hear God saying that's when the tomb becomes a womb. That's when the breaking becomes the blessing. That's when what you went through becomes the weapon. That's when the breaking point builds you up. You looking at other people's lives thinking that they were built into this moment. No, baby, I wasn't built into this moment. I was broken into this moment. I got broke down and I started listening. And anytime I started building and it was off filter, I'd get broken down again so that God could show me, what did I do wrong? There's something powerful about somebody who keeps listening even when I keep getting broken, because I'm crazy enough to believe that if God allows it to break down, it's because he wants me to rebuild it stronger than it was before. Breaking is not the end. Breaking is the point of transformation. Breaking is not the end. It is the point in which you must become an active participant in the blessing connected to your life. It's when you stop hustling and stop doing and stop creating and stop manipulating and stop hustling and stop talking about other people and stop gossiping. I used to gossip, but then I hit my breaking point and I realized hearing my story was more important than hearing somebody else's story. I used to talk behind people's back until I realized I got a knife in my own back. And because I got a knife in my own back, now I start listening for who I should be connected to and who I need to walk away from. And it happened at the breaking point that became the listening point that changed the way that I see everything. I'm listening again. I'm listening. I'm listening. I'm doing less talking so that I can do more listening. I'm doing less celebrating so I can do more listening. I'm doing less writing because I need to do some more listening. I know you're used to counting on me, but right now I'm in my listening season.